his 10 worst mistakes he made during World War II. The Allies often referred to Adolf Hitler as their biggest ally strategically, because he made so many important strategical blunders. Yeah, let's just get into it. I'm starting with the number 10. I'm starting with the less severe mistake, and then the number 1 mistake will be the biggest mistake he made. So anyway, let's get into it. And if you like these kind of videos, please subscribe to the channel. Alright, so mistake number 10 was using jet fighters as regular bombers. Now, I'm just gonna use my cheat sheet here. The German engineers developed the Messerschmitt ME-262, and it was a great fighter. It was the first jet-fueled engine fighter plane, and obviously the engineers who developed it were very enthusiastic about it, especially about the capacity to fight British Spitfire planes. The Messerschmitt had around a top speed around 900 kilometers per hour, and the Spitfire had a top speed around 500-600 kilometers an hour. So there's a huge difference. And when the engineers made the first jet-powered fighter plane, called the Messerschmitt, they automatically assumed they would use it, that the Luftwaffe would be able to use it against as fighter planes. But Adolf Hitler ordered the Messerschmitt to be a bomber plane to perform bombing routes, which were very ineffective because the Messerschmitt was just too fast to bomb accurately. It makes sense, if you fly super fast over a target, the bombs will most likely miss their target, and that is exactly what happened. Later on, I think in 1944 or something, when Hitler gave the permission for the Messerschmitt to be used as a fighter plane, the Luftwaffe was already severely weakened, and yeah, the RAF was superior in the sky, and it was already too late, actually. If Hitler had decided to use the Messerschmitt as a fighter plane, as the German engineers intended, the Luftwaffe would probably have dominated the sky above the European soil. So yeah. Mistake number 9. He kinda sabotaged his own Luftwaffe. Now, let me explain. In June 1940, Hitler initiated the Battle of Britain for Britain, and it was basically the RAF versus the Luftwaffe. Now, after several successful raids of Luftwaffe pilots on factories in Britain and railroads and airfields, fuel depots and stuff like that, the Luftwaffe was kinda like, it had higher ground, like they were like winning, the momentum was on their side. And then there was a bombing raid from the Luftwaffe, which targeted a factory, a British factory, and it killed 8 civilians, whereupon the British bombed German cities, with obviously a lot of civilian casualties. Now this infuriated Hitler, and Hitler he ordered the Luftwaffe to start targeting civilian targets as well. So instead of focusing on the RAF, on these airfields and supply chains and stuff like that to bomb them, Hitler ordered to bomb civilian targets as well. And with that, the RAF itself actually could regain power. They could regain their strength because they were no longer the primary target of the Luftwaffe. And so, yeah, if the Luftwaffe remained targeting the RAF, Hitler would have probably won the Battle of Britain. But because of the change of targets of targeting to civilian targets, they did not win the Battle for Britain. This also became the first defeat of the Germans, of Nazi Germany, and it kind of broke the myth of them being unbeatable, which was also important in a war if your army has that myth surrounding them. But anyways, mistake number 8. Women were not allowed to work. While many women in the US and the UK were working in factories, Hitler did not believe women belonged to the industry. Now, later on in the war, some of them did enter the industry of the women. They were employed as secretaries, phone operators. Also, some women, they joined the SS. Now, this mistake is not as severe. It's also ranked as number 8, so it's not really high up on the list. But the emancipation would have maybe prolonged the capitulation of Germany. So they might have bought some time if women were allowed to work, because obviously men were serving in the front, and yeah, women could have made a difference, especially as I already said, they could have bought some more time, and time is valuable, especially during war times, Alright, then blunder 7. Hitler let British bombers land safely. Now, this is a big mistake actually, because in May 1942, British bombing planes named British bombing raids targeted German cities, and because of the darkness, the flak fire could not be so effective against the bomber planes, and the Luftwaffe countered this by attacking the bombing planes when they were landing their planes back on British soil. I don't really know exactly why it was easier, but I'm guessing it had something to do with I don't know, less altitude or something like that. I think, yeah, maybe because they were landing, they were lowering their altitude, which made it easier for the fighter pilots maybe to attack them. But this was the way the Luftwaffe countered these attacks to attack them when they were landing, so they would have already be gone from German soil. But Hitler ordered the Luftwaffe to attack the bomber planes on German soil, so that they would crash on German soil, and this would, according to Hitler, improve the public morale. But this made it very hard for the Luftwaffe. It made it way harder for the Luftwaffe to down these planes, and it made them more ineffective. If they could have stayed attacking the planes when they were landing, it would have made it easier, and also the RAF, the bombing planes, would damage and there would be more planes destroyed. So yeah, they kind of like that order. And then there's a little bug that flew in through the window. Hey man. Yeah, as I was saying, because of this, the British bombers kind of got like, yeah, a free ticket back to the British soil, because the German pilots were only defending the German soil. Anyways, that has a severity rating of 7, so it wasn't really severe. But moving on, mistake with the number 6. German guns did not innovate enough during the first 2 years of the war. Now, when Hitler conquered Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, when he conquered Poland, when he annexed Austria and Czechoslovakia, and when he beat the French, he thought of himself as, actually he already thought of himself as a strategical genius, but he attributed the entire victory towards himself and his guns that they used back then, you know, the tanks and stuff, and the other guns, I don't know, like a German gun, MP40, I'm not sure that it was used in the first, yeah, I think so, yeah. Anyways, but Hitler thought the war could be won with the weapons they had when they had such like great momentum, you know, in the beginning of the war, which is why the first 2 years he didn't like really funded innovation that much, and obviously the Allies caught up. And 2 years later, when Hitler did like say that they had to innovate in their weaponry, the German engineers came up with some great weapons. I think like the V2 rocket and stuff like that. But however, most of the guns, and I think that those were like submachine guns and SMGs and stuff like that, who were very good, were actually like they never saw real action, because they were like, yeah, start production too late and stuff like that. And I also like read some things about Hitler, like not wanting a specific gun, but it's on the tip of my tongue right now, but I cannot think of the gun, which gun it was, but it was like a very practical and good SMG, but Hitler did not want it for some reason, not want it for the army, which is a big mistake as well. But if you know the name of that gun, because it's kind of like a well-known story, I think, leave it in the comments. But I cannot memorize the name right now. But anyways, because of these 2 years that were not really, because in the first 2 years Hitler did not order any new innovation, this gave the Allies enough time to innovate themselves and like become more efficient, you know, in warfare, you know. And yeah, this was an important mistake, because it actually like it delayed a lot of gun production, and yeah, it kind of like moved around the momentum of the war as well, in my opinion. But moving on to mistake ranked number 5. So it's getting serious, because 1 was the biggest mistake, and obviously this is also a big one. His obsession with Stalingrad. He absolutely needed to conquer Stalingrad. I mean, he didn't need to, but he wanted to, and that was his mistake, his obsession with it. And like when the German assault slowed down, Hitler was worried that he would, as earlier happened to Napoleon, repeat the mistakes of Napoleon, like also failed to conquer Russia. So he then resulted for the 6th Army of the Wehrmacht to be completely surrounded at Stalingrad, and they were just completely cut off and totally wiped out. And they had like 180,000 casualties. And yeah, obviously this wasn't good for morale as well. I forgot what I was going to say there. But anyways, he was obsessed with conquering Stalingrad, and he didn't want to retreat because he thought like Germans should never retreat and stuff like that because of the whole Aryan superiority way of thinking and stuff like that. But yeah, big mistake actually. Moving on, and now it's getting more serious. Blunder number 4. The long awaited assault did not get enough recognition in the first weeks, and obviously I'm talking about D-Day, the 6th of June in 1944. It is said that Hitler was sleeping until 2 p.m. And his generals did not wake him in his residence in Bavaria. And when Hitler did receive the news, he was persuaded this was just a diversion of the Allies, and that the real attack should come in Calais, I think, or somewhere else. He wasn't like. He always thought that the Allies made a diversion attack, and which is why he didn't send troops enough to support to Normandy the first few weeks of the invasion. And this obviously made it a bit easier for the. Sorry, my mustache is getting a bit. Anyways, this made it easier for the Americans to conquer Normandy. And yeah, if Hitler, the generals also didn't really dare to counter Hitler's strategical decisions. And if Hitler just recognized the attack of D-Day being the real US invasion, it probably would have been a lot harder to win in Normandy and the rest of France for the Allies. So yeah, moving on. This was already a big blunder. Moving on to number 3, and now we're entering the top 3 of the 3 biggest blunders of Adolf Hitler. The British got away at Dunkirk. Yeah, we all know, we all probably saw, if you like history, you've probably seen it, in my opinion, amazing movie, Dunkirk. I loved it, I really loved it. But this is not a topic, but I'm just gonna say the movie is awesome, and I get that the director didn't want to use CGI at all, but I thought if this had a little bit of CGI, it would have maybe been so damn perfect. But yeah, anyways, he didn't want to, and I get that for artistical reasons probably, but I'm moving on. I'm sorry. Anyways, biggest blunder number 3. The British got away at Dunkirk. Now, in May 1940, when the Germans were advancing through Europe and France, obviously, they eventually reached the canal, and General Ewald von Kleist had a tank division and 2 infantry divisions to back him up, and the British troops were trapped in Dunkirk on the beaches. They were trapped in Dunkirk, and obviously the General von Kleist wanted to attack them and defeat them, but for an unknown reason, or not really specific reason, I'm not sure, Hitler did not order the attack, which gave the British troops and also some French troops time to retreat to English land. In total, there were 365,000 British British troops in a period of 9 days able to evacuate to the British islands. If the German Wehrmacht could have defeated the British army right there, they would probably have won the war. So this was a big mistake. Anyways, moving on. Number 2. So it's getting real serious right now. Hitler declared war on the US. Now, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, I believe. Was it 1941 or 1942? 1941. But anyways, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, the Japanese ambassador called Oshima urged the Germans to declare war on the US. Now, the German Minister of Foreign Affairs called von Ribbentrop. That's a funny name though. It sounds like a bad guy from like a comic book or something. But anyways, von Ribbentrop, he thought it would be suicide to attack the US because of their economic power. But Hitler, he thought that the US would focus on Japan and they would send most of their troops to Japan. And when Japan inevitably won against the US because Hitler was convinced Japan was undefeatable, Japan could attack Stalin, and then Stalin, the USSR would have a two-front war and they could defeat the USSR together. However, Roosevelt, he sent most of his troops to the European theater of war, which surprised Hitler. And yeah. So, and my fridge is making noise again. So yeah, if like they didn't declare war on the US, I'm not sure how the war would have ended out, because you can never like really think what would have happened. But this is a big mistake though, because I mean like he totally miscalculated the reaction of the US or the impact of his decision. And now for the biggest blunder. Invading Russia in summer gear. So Hitler, when he thought of the plan to invade Russia, when he wanted to invade Russia, he said, we only need to kick the door and the whole building will collapse. And obviously he was talking about the Soviet Union. He thought they would conquer the Soviets in a few months. And when they, in June, initiated the attack against the Soviets, they were going fast. Fast in a good tempo towards Moscow. But then Hitler, he wanted the course to change to the Caucasian area where there were a lot of fuel reserves, and he wanted that fuel. The generals of the German army urged Hitler to first conquer Moscow, which was a Soviet supply. How do you say that one? A Soviet supply was in the Soviet supply chain. But Hitler first wanted to order a large part of their troops towards the Caucasian area, and then, they could have reached Moscow in 2 months or something, in September then, because the assault was from June, so it would have been in August, September. But because of the diversion towards the Caucasian area, they only reached Moscow in December, I think, yeah. And the German army was totally not clothed for these cold temperatures. They didn't have any fur, they had metal helmets, which didn't help against the cold at all. The precious steel helm, which looks cool which looks really cool. But yeah, it obviously doesn't protect against the cold. So the Wehrmacht actually relied on stealing boots from fallen Russian soldiers, or stealing from the local population, or doing other innovations with their uniforms to protect them from the cold. And yeah, the situation was really dire for the soldiers, and if Hitler didn't divert his course towards the Caucasian, they wouldn't have needed they wouldn't have needed winter clothing for the soldiers. But yeah, he died first, so they were only like reaching Moscow in winter, which was too late because of the freezing cold temperatures. And that was the biggest blunder of Adolf Hitler. Let me know in the comments if you agree with this list, if you think that some of them were more severe than others in the order that I put them. But I based myself upon an article I read, a very interesting article, and I more or less agreed with like the severity of the blunders. So yeah, if you like these kind of videos, please subscribe. I will make sure, I will definitely make more videos because I enjoy doing the research and I enjoy filming the videos. And I also enjoy it when you like and subscribe to the video. So please subscribe, and I'll catch you